Welcome to Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and today, once again, I'm joined by Lawrence Connolly. Welcome back, Lawrence. How are you?
It's good to be here, mate. I'm well. I'm glad of the international break. Chance for the boys to regroup, hopefully, and get kind of planning almost a mini season up until the winter break, or up until the turn of the year.
Well, the big thing last season, we think back to the turnaround after the winter break, Lawrence, whereby the club goes away to Dubai, comes back rejuvenated, and in the second half obviously goes on to win the league. And I think as a Celtic fan, you're looking for some kind of turnaround. It's a much shorter period of time. It's not as though the players are all going to group because we've got so many international call-ups. But I am kind of pinning my hopes on the fact that this break is a natural break whereby we can come back in the second half of the season basically, and show the signs that we are going to go on a long-term run. There's not going to be any more of these false dawns. I mean, do you think that's possible under the circumstances?
Listen, Lenny's proven in the past, I know you may have your doubts if you can do it again, but it's proven in the past that you can use breaks and, as you touched on last season, bring back a team and get it firing on all cylinders. Hopefully we've had a bad luck with injuries and corona casualties so far this season. We know other teams haven't been affected as much as us so far. After international break, Big Chris is going to be great to come back. That's Chris Julian, not the other Big Chris, Big Aya. I hope he's not playing for Norway. Cause
I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Because there's a chance he might be.
Yeah, are Norway really going to care if he gets injured? If they get 60, 70 minutes out, and they don't care if they send him back injured, do they? They just want results for their team. Griff is away with Scotland. Isn't much needed minutes for Griff and his legs. Lenny doesn't seem to think so, but yeah, I think we can definitely use it to come out a bit better. Gavin Strachan will have been in longer. The players that are left behind, hopefully, whatever ideas he's got as first team coach, he's got a bit of time to implement them during the break or get his messages across. There's a bit of time for reflection. Hopefully Lenny and Gavin are watching the videos of recent performances and just highlighting what we can do better.
You touched on me doubting whether or not Neil Lennon can do it again, if you like. And, what I'd like to say about that is I trust that Celtic have got a squad of players who are capable of further success this season, and by success I mean winning the league. That is the absolute priority. And I've said already on the podcast a few times, Lawrence, that on a personal note, I would like to win the league and I'd like to win the quadruple treble, and I'd like to win the whole lot, but I'd be satisfied with that this season. My biggest concern isn't due to the loss of form, and nobody can deny that there has certainly been a loss of form, the patchy form. It's down to the things beyond that Neil Lennon has mentioned himself after the 2 European games, Ferencváros and Sparta Prague. And if you take the content of those 2 interviews, they would suggest that there are underlying issues, dressing room issues, training ground issues, cultural issues, players wishing to go, etc., etc. So that's what I'm basing it on, because you're not only trying to get people playing a system, you're not only trying to get people back fit so that you've got your strongest team. You know that form is temporary and players will start to play well again. Look at El Yunusi, he's flying, whereas at the beginning of the season we were finding it difficult to get a performance out of him. But my concerns are deeper, and I'm hoping that this break will allow some of these issues to be ironed out. And we don't know the full extent of the issues. We're only going by what Lenny said. So the comments I've made are beyond the football, because I think when I look at that Celtic squad, we have a squad of players capable, more than capable, of being a success this season. But the doubt in my mind has actually been planted in my mind by Neil Lennon himself. You know, the Ferencváros interview where he says there's players who want to leave, and he took the opportunity post-match to bring that to our attention. And then the Sparta Prague interview where he's talking about a cultural change, he's talking about attitude, he's talking about players being lazy. That's what concerns me. So don't get me wrong, it's not because I have a vendetta against Neil Lennon. I would love for Lennon to turn this round. I would absolutely love for him to turn it round, because the priority for me is for Celtic to continue their domination in the game. When we look at the international break, a couple of guys you mentioned there. Firstly, Griffiths. Right, so Lee Griffiths is obviously in the squad for the 3 upcoming games for Scotland, and there seems to be a renewed interest in the Scottish national team amongst a lot of football fans. I don't know what your interest is in the national team, Lawrence, or if you have any interest in the international side.
It's a number between -1 and 1, just like it's in the middle. -1 and 1.
All right. My interest in international football at the moment is always towards Celtic. So I'm looking at the players that are playing for Norway and for Scotland and the Republic of Ireland and wherever else our players are playing, because we've got a quality squad, which means that a lot of our players are out there and they're involved. But I am looking at the job that Steve Clarke's done. I know that Steve Clarke has previously been quoted and been interviewed for the Celtic manager's job previously. And I think the job he's doing is reminiscent of Craig Brown's. He's basically shoring up the back line. That's his absolute key attribute as a manager, I think. That's why he done so well at Kilmarnock. Yet, there's a sprinkling, Lawrence, of real quality in that Scotland squad. It's absolutely no surprise that most of the players I'm going to mention have played for Celtic, play for Celtic, or should have played for Celtic. So you've got guys like John McGinn, Stuart Armstrong, Ryan Christie, Callum McGregor. You know, real quality. Andy Robertson, Kieran Tierney. You've got Griffiths up front. And I do think we've got a collection of players, but I'm looking at the game on Thursday night, and this isn't an international podcast, but I'm looking at the players on Thursday night, and I think that Clarke will go for a nothing each draw, and he'll just hope that we get a set piece, and he'll be looking at the likes of Griff, Armstrong, possibly Christie, to try and nick a win in extra time.
Mate, I have no idea who they're playing. I couldn't care
Come
less.
on, you do.
As long as the Celtic players don't get injured, they come back fit and available for Celtic. That's, I suppose, my extent of my interest in it. You know,
but the issue has been in the last international break that the break was pivotal in Celtic's season. It's one of these things that has created issues for Celtic, has been the international break last time round. So it is an important topic. And obviously, in the past, we've always hoped that players come back uninjured. Now there's a double whammy. We don't want the injuries. We don't want the illness to come back with the virus. But the point that you actually made, and the reason we're talking about Scotland, is the Griffiths issue. So it's obviously a fitness issue. It's been well documented. He came back from pre-season. He wasn't fit enough to join the squad over in France. It took him a while to come back into the team. When he did come back into the team, I mean, he's come off the bench to score against St Johnstone, Aberdeen, Sparta Prague. He's shown that he can be an impact sub. Griffiths himself, I'm sure, wants to play a bigger part for Celtic. But it sounded this week that Clarke is going to utilise him as that impact sub. So let's say he gets 20, 30 minutes in 3 games, Lawrence. I would have thought, as a casual observer, that would be good to get minutes into his legs. The match fitness is getting built up. But the comments by Lenny was that he wasn't convinced that was a good thing for Griffiths. How could it not be the case? Would he have rather Griff was at Celtic working on his conditioning?
The comments is definitely he was rather he was at Celtic. Now, whether it's working on conditioning or other things in his games, I don't know. But Griff has definitely been, he scores goals. We're back to, it looks like we're going to play one forward. Well, we know Griff can do that. What was it, 40 goals or something?
40 goals under Ronnie. I mean, you look at his goal scoring record throughout his career, stretching back to Olivier, Dundee, even Wolves. I mean, he was a goal every 2 games for Wolves, prolific for Hibs, prolific for Celtic. I think, when you look at his entire career, he is a prolific goal scorer. But what he gives you as well, Lawrence, is you win a free kick 30 yards from goal, and then, all bets are off when it comes to Griff.
On top of that, he seems to give the team a lift, doesn't he? He's got that he's got that desire to win that shows on the part, that shows that he's trying his heart out. You know, I don't think I've ever seen or heard Griff criticised for, he wasn't trying today, or he's chipped it, or he seems, fit or not, he seems to be running about, putting a shift in.
He makes an impact.
Goals.
He makes an impact. He's the only time I think this season that he's been fairly anonymous was the first half against AC Milan. That game might have been too early for his first start, I reckon. That's the only time where he's not impressed. But any other game he's come on, he has made an impact. Against
AC Milan, he was still putting the effort in, wasn't he? It was,
of course.
He didn't get his customary goal. I think that's what we're saying there, isn't it? And
I mean, even against Rangers when he comes on, Lawrence, there's an incident whereby I know that you were shouting for him to go down. You were criticised for saying as much.
Me and Andy Walker.
You were criticised for telling Celtic players to cheat. But no, you weren't saying that. You were saying that he had to be cuter in a situation like that. I actually thought his biggest error there was he should have just put his foot in the ball and looked up rather than try to squeeze it in, because the shot wasn't on. But even against Rangers, there was an impact. There was an instant impact that we had missed for the best part of that game, and that's what Griffiths gives you. I would be hoping that Griffiths would come back fitter. I can't see why he wouldn't.
Yeah, for me, you hear everyone talking about, he's not match fit, you need minutes to get match fit, that's what you need. This would seem minutes to get match fit, wouldn't it? But what would Celtic and Lenny have in mind for him staying behind? Surely it's not just conditioning work, because apparently match fitness is you can only get when you're on the park. Is there something else they want to work on with him? I don't know, is there some other worry with him, or some underlying issue that they're working on and treating at the moment, and perhaps that treatment has to stop when he's away from the club? I don't know, but Lenny seems to think it would be a better idea.
I think it comes down to Lawrence. If you've got the 3 international games, the training in between those games is less intense than what you would be getting at Celtic Park. And I think the conditioning and that side of the game is what obviously Lee Griffiths is lacking, to the point where he's not starting for Celtic. I'm not jumping on this bandwagon that Chris Sutton is driving at the minute to say that he's out of shape and he's overweight and he's a disgrace and all that, because I'm not subscribing to that. What I think Neil Lennon is maybe focusing on is he wants to have Lee Griffiths under his own microscope, rather than being in the Scotland game, when it's maybe not as intense when it's the training. They're not international managers. It's not their job to get a player fit.
If we're talking about fitness and increasing his VO2 capacity, you can do anaerobic training, in half an hour a day. You can do that kind of intensity in that shorter period, if that's what they want to build on conditioning. So it doesn't need to be 4 hours training to build that. They could do it in 30 minutes a day. Mm-hmm. So, and Griff I don't know if Griff's a good trainer by himself, but sure that there's gym and training facilities open to Griff if he wants to put an extra half hour in and work on his conditioning.
Well, the big thing is, again, and we're talking to, on a weekly basis, Stevie Mullen from St Roch's, and we know that during the period where he was left at home, and the Celtic squad went over to France, and Tommy Roderick was left at home as well, a couple of others, he was working at James McGrory Park on his fitness, additional hours, and he was working hard at James McGrory Park. So you only go by what you know. So we know that took place, and Griffiths was putting in the extra hours and the extra yards. In terms of him being overweight, I thought that there was a couple of things after the Sparta Prague game that I felt were particularly harsh. People might scoff at me because I've been accused of being particularly harsh at points this season myself. But one of them was Lee Griffiths being overweight and being a disgrace and not being fit, and that was Chris Sutton that said that. The other one, and we'll come on to this other player in a moment or two, was the stick in the criticism that Mo El Yunusi got for checking his mobile phone.
Yeah, I mean, Griff being overweight, I've seen it on pictures on the forum, and somebody put something, there you go, he's overweight, when he's walking off a park, and I'm looking at the picture and going, looks fine to me. I don't know. To be honest, it doesn't look overweight to me, but what do I know? I'm just glancing at him. I'm not weighing him and checking his BMI index and get everything that Celtic's got. It's something getting some information, because looking at him as a guy, it doesn't appear to be overweight and out of shape when you look at him, but yet he's not starting. So maybe something is getting a wee bit more information than we can get visually just by looking at Lee Griffiths.
I thought that initially, Lawrence, because we know that obviously Neil Lennon and Chris Sutton are still pals. They're mates. Sutty said that himself. But there was two different there was two different takes from Chris Sutton after the game. First of all, very, very critical of the players over the manager, I felt. And when you read that, or when I read it certainly, I thought, that's a message. There's a message there that's obviously filtering through from Neil Lennon. That's what I felt after the game, and the emotions are running high. But then there was a following day, there was another piece that Chris Sutton wrote in relation to the aftermath, and he was very critical of Neil Lennon, and he was focusing on the comments around culture, which you and I have already discussed. And then I started thinking, well, maybe it was Chris Sutton's own view rather than something that had kind of filtered into his opinion by, you know, the discussions he may or may not have had with Neil Lennon. But he was very critical of Lennon, and he basically said that, you know, if you're calling for a culture change, in essence, what you're doing is calling for a manager change. And he did say that. Yeah,
at this point of the season, because, you know, transfer window shut, so you can't change players.
We've already strengthened, you know, sixfold. A squad that was good enough to win the treble last season, hopefully.
Definitely strengthened. But I suppose on Sutton, he was also complimentary of Griff's ability as well as slaughtering him. He wasn't completely, you know, it was just on his condition, wasn't it? But he was saying he's a fantastic talent. On the transfer window, we spoke about it before. I think Celtic fans were generally happy with it. Was Neil Lennon happy? We know he wanted wingers and got none. And we know he was after a Sampdoria centre-half who's a tall, quick, athletic centre-half, apparently available for between 9 and 12 million euros, and he got Shane Duffy. We know Lenny can pick a centre-half normally, you know, look at Big Virgil. Duffy's deficiencies have been that he's slow. So, although generally I'm happy with the transfer window, I can see why Neil is maybe saying, if you got me my first choice, that boy for Sampdoria, and at centre-half, a quicker centre-half, which is what I want, he was my first choice, we would have had a better transfer window if I'd had wingers or I'd had more options. So maybe that's where Lenny's bristling at. He just wants it to be better. He's not saying it's been a bad one, but it could have been better. I think Brendan touched on it, didn't he? When he said we don't get a first choice. Targets a lot.
I know, but again, this is very much with hindsight, because I think obviously we done quite a few podcasts talking about the transfer window, and it was a very impressive window at that moment in time. The club are tweeting it out. They're delighted with it. There's this question, I think, Lawrence, no one in the modern game has complete control over everything that happens like managers did back in the day under the days of Don Revie, Brian Clough, Jock Stein, Bill Shankly. But, you know, it's a completely different game. So we realise that players sign for football clubs that haven't been identified, stroke selected, stroke agreed by the football manager. And one of the most recent examples of that was Marian Shved when he signed, and Rodgers was like, who? You know, I'm sure he'll be a great player for this club. You know, he had no idea about this young kid, and it was disrespectful to the player, it was disrespectful to Celtic for him to say that. But the concerns around recruitment were kind of raised again, and you're thinking, is this the thoughts of the manager filtering through someone who is close to the manager, when there were comments on Twitter by David Lowe, and he was talking about the head of recruitment being to blame for the bad signings.
Listen,
now you can't on one hand say, right, let's give Virgil van Dijk to Neil Lennon, but let's say Shane Duffy wasn't his signing.
Look, I think we can say, and I think it's agreed it's been a good transfer window. Well, I think perhaps Lenny's looking going, you know, it could have been better. I don't think there's any doubt that the board and the finances they put up has kind of surpassed the expectations, certainly of what we've been used to in terms of transfer windows. We're still, you know, errors were made, bringing in players late again, you know, taking forever to get them over the line.
Yeah.
That's a constant, for me that's an error. Maybe for Celtic that's a few weeks' wages saved. I don't know why we leave it so late to bring them in. We obviously know Lenny was on record about a couple of wingers, and, you know, it was after that centre half it didn't get him. So Lenny's going, well, that's how it could have been better. I think Lenny himself would say, I'd be surprised if he wouldn't say it was a good transfer window in general. I think he's just saying it could have been better. And one of the weaknesses he identified is a weakness that's kind of come back to haunt us, a lack of pace at centre half. There's part of that has been down to injuries, part of it's been down to coronavirus, maybe it's down to Shane having to play 3 games a week when he's used to playing 1 or 2 a month.
I'm going to ask you about Shane Duffy. I'm going to ask you about Shane Duffy, because again, you know, I was critical. just before the Motherwell game. I wasn't surprised that he was left on the bench. Lenny has commented on him. But Lee Griffiths, so we reckon he's going to be on the bench for the playoff. It's against Serbia, by the way, Lawrence.
Right, okay.
The Euro 2020 playoff. Clark has kind of made it clear that he's been very impressed with his impact substitute appearances for Celtic. And I think the big thing for me with Griffiths is he is key at set pieces. He's shown that for club and country. The way that Clark plays, he'll be pushing for a nothing each draw. If he can get a goal in a break, great. If not, he'll go for a nothing each, even if that means right through extra time. It'll be a backs to the wall performance, and he'll be looking for something like a set piece for Griffiths to step up to the plate, as he has done so often for Celtic and Scotland, famously against England. So I think it would be a good thing actually for Lee Griffiths. I'm going to disagree there. I actually think it's a good thing that he's involved and he's going to get some minutes under his belt, and hopefully he'll come back uninjured and fitter than he is prior to going away.
Hopefully minutes and goals, and he comes back high in confidence and fitter. Yeah.
Now, we're going to be looking at all the, or many of the comments coming through on the social media, Facebook, Twitter and YouTube channels. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we are pushing the figures up as much as we can, and that allows us to broadcast on a regular basis. When we've got a match, we often put out 4 or 5 broadcasts in a day. Generally on a weekday, it's the 12:30 Bulletin, which is getting some great audience figures as well. And this Sunday, because there's no football, we've decided that we're going to hook up with another Celtic podcast, Lawrence, and we're going to do the Bulletin with another Celtic podcast. Would you credit that?
That's class. Is it like an old-fashioned battle of the bands? Is it battle of the podcast? See who gets
Aerosmith, Run DMC style, possibly. Yeah. So we're going to get them in, and that'll be interesting to get a different take on Celtic from a different podcast team. So look forward to that. That'll be on 12:30 on Sunday. So let's have a look at some of the comments. Now, John Sweeney, you're commenting on YouTube. Welcome to the show, John. Every game is a must win, because we are asking, how are Celtic going to return? Are we going to have this transformation? Are we going to have this turnaround that we're all kind of hoping and praying for, Neil Lennon included? So John Sweeney says every game is must win, and hopefully still in touch till we get to the transfer window. And we must bring in at least 3 new players for the defence, as Barkas and Duffy are not cutting it. Now, the big thing again, when you're looking at the transfer window, Lawrence, is we brought in 6. Now, people might argue and cite David Turnbull when I say this, but I don't think any of the 6 were project signings. I think they were all first team players that we would expect to be playing, not always starting, because that comes down to form. But I think the 6 players came in. We've already mentioned, we've got 3 players coming from the EPL, the English Premier League, with El Yunusi, Duffy, and of course Ayeti coming in. So high standard of player. And if we bring another 3 in, that's almost a full team. I mean, really? Do we really need that kind of wholesale change to a team that's going for a quadruple treble?
I would hope not. I'd hope we get to January and players that have been out injured are back, players that have been off of form are taking a wee bit of time to go up to speed. A new goalkeeper. I'm looking at Barkas, and I don't think he's had any glaring errors, but I think he's probably needing a big save or 2 just to build his confidence. He looked as if he picked up an injury in the clash with Duffy. So it's January, if you're still going for 10 and Big Fraser's available.
I've heard that.
That's a question, isn't it?
I've heard that coming up again. I've heard it coming up again, and I'm not convinced Celtic would go
down that route.
I don't think so. I mean, when you're looking at where we were, at the end of last season, going into the transfer window, who were our goalkeepers? All right, Fraser Foster, Craig Gordon, Scott Bain, right, and then you've got your backup. I think Hazard was called up for Northern Ireland, wasn't he? The first team.
Conor Hazard's really highly rated. He's had some loan spells. He's obviously third choice at the moment. Mm-hmm. He's a big keeper. Apparently, great future ahead of him. Remember Marshall got start against Barcelona, threw him into the prominence, didn't it? So, yeah, he's highly rated. Barkas, I don't think we've seen enough of him to say that he's not going to cut it.
No, I don't think you can write him off at this stage, Lawrence. You're right. I really don't think so. I mean, he came in for some criticism early on in the season. That came back. and it was kind of media driven, I think. But we were unhappy, I think, obviously with the overall performances. We were trying to pinpoint what is the issue in the defence here. But you know, Duffy has been one of the issues. A lack of pace at the back obviously has. I think Laxalt gives you a lot of pace at the back, as does Frimpong. We'll come back to talk about Frimpong in a minute. But really it's a case of trying to find, and I spoke about yesterday, you know, that triangle that we had, and I spoke to Andy Lynch about this. Andy Lynch spoke about having the two centre halves and the goalie. They've got to have an understanding. It sounds kind of obvious, but if you don't have that, then it filters throughout the whole defensive setup of that side. We had it, you know, we had it with Craig Gordon, Denier and Van Dijk, and I thought that was solid. That really was solid. You're then looking at Forster, Julian Ayer. I thought that was a good, you know, defensive framework to build on. This season we've not had that. We've not had the consistency of team selection through injury, of course, but we've got to make that decision now. Stephen Forbes, do you think Bain should keep his place after the international break? His more vocal leadership style could be a strength during this difficult period. And, you know, as I say, I mean, Bacchus was never dropped. He was injured.
Yep.
He's just not got the jersey back because obviously Bain, as far as Neil Lennon is concerned, has played well enough. I don't think you drop him on the... You don't drop him based on his performance against Motherwell, certainly.
But Scott Bain, could he have done better with a goal? I think he could have done better with a goal.
But is that a droppable offence when you've won 4-1?
So, as long as the winning keeper can have howlers and keep his position, would you say?
Well, Arthur Boruc did. Arthur Boruc, you know, he was good at a howler here and there, and it didn't result in him being dropped.
I think maybe the difference is it's a bit more intimidating to tell Arthur he'd be dropped. You never know how he'd react.
Listen, mate, he's in the cubicle having a cigar at half time.
Yeah, but listen, it's one that's up for debate. You know, we'll never know what we've got in Barkas unless we play him. We do need to get a settled back line. I know Gary Doonan at comments on the podcast often has said, you know, Neil, you know, switch between three keepers some seasons, but at the moment I think we're in some kind of
stability.
Yeah, and something is, you know, it's enforced through COVID and through injury. You're looking at, you know, did Welsh do anything to deserve getting dropped?
Well, he's completely out the first team squad now.
Yeah. You know, I mean, he started the season out the first team squad, in fairness, didn't he? You know, he was still listed as a reserve player on the club website. But did he do anything to get dropped? I thought, you know, he looked decent. He's quick enough. He wins his headers. He's
coming at the worst possible time. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's a strange one to say that, because obviously we're the team going for the quadruple treble, and, you know, it's always good to remind ourselves of that. But he did come in at the worst possible time because we were in a bit of disarray at the back. I mean, I go back. Let's talk. You brought up Foster, and I've seen a lot of comments on social media, Lawrence, talking about go out and get the big man back. It was a pivotal aspect to Neil Lennon's team last season. Nobody can deny that. First time round as well, when you look at some of the big wins, I mean, some of the famous wins, Foster's key to that, right? Can Lenny only be a success with the goalkeeper, the big man, Fraser Forster? I don't think so. I don't think he is. Listen, he's been a massive player for Neil Lennon. Welsh Lenny's been the manager of Celtic. But we went for him, we didn't get him. Does that change in January? Who knows? We've spent £4.5 million on a goalie. Let's go back to Foster when I seen a turning point in Foster. You remember the game against Hearts at Celtic Park when Wanyama scored a fantastic goal from about 30 yards. Foster saves a penalty. Yep. Now, leading up to that game, Foster was under the cosh. He was under the spotlight. Celtic fans were not convinced largely. I remember when it was announced it wasn't the permanent signing, I think it was his second loan, and it was on the night of the Sion game. Remember when they got, did they not play a player that wasn't registered and all that? It was at Celtic Park. It was a horrendous game. Chad Uri sold the jerseys that night. And I remember when it was announced that we'd sign them again, nobody was overly excited about it. What was the complaints? Doesn't command his box for a big guy, should claim more crosses, doesn't get down quick enough. Just about everything you can. No good with his feet. Just about everything about a keeper. So my complaints about him then. But the point is, Lawrence, you do have to persevere at times. Yeah. And I think you don't go from being a £4.5 million record goalkeeper signing for Celtic to being a bad goalkeeper who's useless overnight. But we've not seen enough of him. So I suppose once we get to January, if Ben keeps the gloves and doing really well, he's keeping Barkas out of the team. Why would we need to go and get someone? You know,
Bain's performing well enough to keep Barkas out of the team. Barkas has come in and performed really well. Would Celtic go back to Big Fraser? But from Celtic's point of view, that was a done deal. And the same comments in the press would suggest that Fraser, they feel let down by him. They feel that he kind of went back on a deal that was already done. You know, their expectations weren't met from Foster's behaviour. So I think you're right. You know, cracking keeper, but would Lenny kind of swat in Celtic's swallow their pride and go back for him if we're struggling for a keeper at that time? You know, if Barkas and Bain are doing well, I doubt they would go back in for him. If they're not doing well, and we're still, you know, going for the league and hopefully the 5th treble in a row, it's a big decision to go, well, we've got 2 keepers not performing well. Foster's on the bench at Southampton. Because things might change for Foster. If he's in a Southampton team, it's a no-go as well, isn't it? So, but if he's still on the bench at Southampton, it's a big question. I don't think right now we need to sign another keeper. Come January, that might change if Barkas has had a run of games and he's looked absolutely terrible. But, you know, that's one for the future. I suppose it's a decision we're only going to make in January. It's centre-halves. Julian comes back in. Duffy's maybe get more acclimatised. Well, I've seen a young Welsh quite like him. You've got Ayer. You've got hopefully Elhamed and Beaton remaining fit. So, you know, if we're injury-free and the defence starts performance, are they going to say, right, we've got Shane here, we're paying a fortune for him. He's now doing what we thought we'd do. Let's go and buy another centre-half.
Let me ask you a question then, Lawrence, because I take all of that into account again. You know, by the same token, Shane Duffy doesn't become a bad player overnight, right?
Yep.
We're probably looking at the moment for a combination that works at the centre half position. And I say a combination, I mean that triangle, I mean the 3, and that includes the goalie. What is the best combination there? Then we can work from there. Let's say we're going to Ibrox. Are you confident with Scott Bain in your goal at this moment in time? That's the question.
I don't think it comes down to. I don't think the confidence comes down to who's in goal.
I think it does, because if you go to Ibrox with Fraser Forster in goal, I'm a confident man.
You're more confident.
I'm very confident.
You're more confident, but I don't
quite
think,
a bit more though.
I don't think the keepers at Celtic, Bain or Barkas, are bad that you'd be going, oh, we're not going to win a game because they're in goals. Is that what we're saying? We've got to the level that these 2 keepers will go, well, no chance of winning because they're in goals.
No, but what you do get is you get a performance from your defence a lot of the time based on the man who's influencing them behind the 2 centre-halves. So, and this season, our defence has been all over the place.
But so it's also about how the defence is going to perform.
Of course it is, but then...
Although it's influenced by the keeper, it can't be solely down to the keeper, how that
well,
defence
of course
performs.
It can. It goes down to the 11 players on the park, but our issue this season has been the defence, and part of that, massive part of that, is we don't even know who our best goalkeeper is. So we're talking about Fraser Forster. Who would you be more confident going into a battle at Ibrox with right now? Foster, Barkas or Bain?
Well, Foster's been there and done it. Foster's a better keeper than Bain, I think without doubt. Barkas, I don't think we've seen enough of. That's what it comes down to. He hasn't had one big save for us.
Robert Hyland agrees with you.
Brilliant save. We've not had that yet.
Robert Hyland agrees with you. He's commenting on YouTube. No one knows if Barkas can cut it or not. He has not been given a chance and has really not done a lot wrong. I think he's part of an overall issue with the defence, Lawrence, and a lot of the time, you know, you're looking at the goalie, but you're also looking at that goalie to command your defence, and we're bringing in the Ireland captain, and you think to yourself, right, he's going to lead someone like Ayer, who often is described as a guy who's rough around the edges, a rough diamond. I think it's been another way about it. He's looked like the influential kind of captain. Like, you sometimes forget Ayer's only 22.
Yeah, he's got a lot of, I mean, he started fit 22, is that 7 first team seasons under his belt? Mm-hmm. Made first team when he was 15, didn't he?
He did, because obviously, you know, in Norway, I think that they're not scared of throwing in youngsters. Remember, Dyle done it with Martin Odegaard, 15 years of age, gave him his debut, ended up at Real Madrid. But I think that's the biggest issue. There is this whole view that, you know, you just hope that it resolves itself, because we do have quite a few centre halves. We were screaming for Shane Duffy to come in when Julian and I were fit, and playing together.
I think we realised. I think it looked like Lenny wanted to move to a back 3 at that point, didn't he? I mean, I think.
Do you think that's been scrapped? Do you think that whole concept of the back 3, we can see from the personnel it's not working, and we're going to remain with the 4. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
I think that's going to be personnel led. Who's fit and who's not? Because I think Lenny's idea, the bit boy for Sampdoria, is right. I'll play I'll play the back 3. We've not had everyone to choose from, so I think the change has been forced on him. The last game looked good. Game before it looked terrible. Game before that looked good. It's been up and down, and we've changed formation a couple of times this season. So a lot of it enforced by COVID or injuries. So I don't think we're going to see the last of it. No, I think it's going to depend on who we're playing and what personnel we've got fit. We're back after an international game. It's Hibs away, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yep. That's a big game. If Barker starts and saves a penalty or pulls off a wonder save, maybe that gives everybody confidence in him. We need the 3 points there. If Barker has a cracking game there, I think we'd all be a lot happier, wouldn't we?
Oh, definitely. I mean, he was the guy that we brought in to be the number 1.
Yep.
He's been brought in to be the number 1. You don't spend that kind of money. Celtic don't spend that kind of money on a goalie to sit on the bench. But it comes into form, Lawrence, as you say, and we do need probably a big performance from him. But I think the same could be said about a few guys in that team.
Yeah.
I think we needed a big performance from El Yunusi, and we got it.
Yes, some of them have get doubters to answer. I think we started off this season going, is left back the position we've got to worry about? And it's probably the position I'm least worried about.
Yeah, it was all the discussion, wasn't it?
With Taylor and Laxalt, or Taylor and Diego, with Com, that's the position I'm probably least worried about in the team at the moment. I've got left back, we've got 2 guys that can play that position and can play it well. Now, people say Taylor doesn't beat a man. Well, he's got a decent record in assists. He's got, in goals from his full back position. I think he's solid enough, especially as a second choice behind Diego. And Diego, I think, has been a revelation since he came in. So left back, we're happy with, I think, now.
Oh, definitely. Without a doubt. Right
back, I think it's still unresolved. We'll try to develop Frimpong into a right back. I don't think he's ever going to be a right back, but Danny seems to rate him highly. Lenny rates him highly. They see the potential there. So, how do we develop players if we don't play them? We don't have a reserve league these days to develop players in. We're losing young players to
He's developing at the highest level. He's developing on the European stage, So he's making mistakes at that level.
Yeah, we're losing young players because we don't have a reserve league and we don't put someone to develop them. So here's a guy we are developing that is making mistakes because he's developing. It's maybe a bit of rough with the smooth there. If we want to develop him, we know he's going to make mistakes. But we've got El Hamid. I think it's a decent backup right back. Who's first choice for me? I'm not too sure. Because we lack a bit of height as a team. We know we're susceptible to set pieces, cross balls, free kicks pumped, into the centre of defence. And midfield are small in stature. I don't think we've got 6 foot in the midfield, have we?
The tallest midfielder is probably Beaton, but he's not really being utilised there. Yeah. Yep.
So out of the guys that play midfield, are we getting empty? What about Elanusi's 5'10", what's Brown, about 5'10"?
Certainly the centres are quite small.
Yeah.
Christie's a fair size. Roderick's a giant.
Yeah, big so probably Big Tom's the tallest there. But I think, as a team we're lacking a bit of height. So right back maybe El Hamid, and then if you've got Ayer and Julian fit, that's 2 big boys, isn't it? That's 2 big boys, and you've got Duffy potentially on the bench or potentially starting with him if we go for a 3. I think midfield we need to sort out the centre. I think Cal Mack's wasted how far back he's playing. Brown's playing an awful lot of games. God knows what Turnbull and Sorrow are doing at the club. Do we see them as direct replacements for Brown? Do we just see them as backups? Is Brown going to play forever? Christie is all action, no complaints about Ryan. Tom's come on to a bit of a game when he looked as if he was going out of the club. Moyes hit form. And up front, Eddie's off form. He initially was right in amongst the goals. He's still looking good. Klimala, I think he's a project player, and we need to get Griff fit. So if we get Griff fit, I suppose you're not so worried about the forward, because Eddie's a class player. That a downturn in form's not going to last forever for him, I think.
Not for a guy like of his class. No, you're right. It's a temporary thing with Edward. And what frustrates me a wee bit is when you hear the comments in the press saying, well, he's taking the eye off the ball. I think it was Andy Walker, because he's interested in moving elsewhere, and he's instantly blaming his form on that. The boys just come back for COVID.
Yeah, and people talk about long COVID and how long it takes you to recover. We don't know, but you were touching on Foster giving the team competence. I tell you what, everybody recognises the class that French Eddie has, and I think he definitely lifts the team and scares the opposition when he knows he's on the park. Whether he's on form or not, I think they're still frightened of him.
The big thing for me again, it looks as though Lenny's happy to revert back to the four at the back, Lawrence, and it looks as though he's reverting to one up front. But the problem with Edouard is the minute, as you say, comes on the park, he gets the ball, there's 2 or 3 people around him. Now, he's actually capable of getting around them and taking them on, but what we've seen when Griffiths came into the side last season was that the space developed by Edouard, people swarming around Edouard like moths to a flame, gave pockets of space that Griffiths could exploit. But if we're not playing 2 up front, we don't see that.
Yeah, anyone that's taking more than one man to mark him should leave space for his teammates to exploit, whether that's a late run from Callum is brilliant at late runs if he's playing further forward, or whether he's playing with a second forward who's getting more space, just without having to make the run, just be down to that. Eddie's got 3 guys on him. We definitely need to make better use of that. When was the last time I seen Callum cause him some proper damage? Was it against Aberdeen?
McGregor, I mean, he played well against Hibs, but again, it's one of these ones where I look at the players. I'm not that concerned about our offensive players, I've got to say. I'm not that concerned about Ryan Christie, Tommy Rogic, El Yunusi. Right, if Edouard's off form, we've got Ayeti, we've got Griffiths. That's not my big concern. My concern at the moment is the defence, but the defensive areas include Brown and McGregor at the moment because they're lying so deep. Are they replicating a bit of each other's work? Probably. Is there enough variety between the two of them? At the moment, no, because McGregor is playing a similar role to Brown, which I don't think's his best role, Lawrence.
So, if we were to change it and say, right, Brown doesn't appear to the legs to be box to box. Against Motherwell, we played further forward, but Motherwell got a lot of chances against us.
Our best defensive midfield player is Beaton.
Well, we could say, what about saying to Scott Brown, right, you just patrol the area between the centre halves and 10 yards into the opposition box, and we go 4-1, 4-1. Callum, you push further forward. And ask Brown to cover less ground. I don't know what the answer is at the moment. Beaton, I said at the weekend, why aren't we giving him a chance in front of centre halves? It's more natural to drop back and make the third centre half when the full-backs are forward. It gives us a bit more height in the team. We've got 2 top centre halves, whether it's Aya, Julian or Iron Duffy. Any of those 3 are well over 6 foot. I think Julian and Aya are over 6'4", aren't they? You've got Beaton there. It's addressing a deficiency we've got because we know we're susceptible to balls into the box and we lack a bit of height. We could give Beaton a run. I suppose you were talking about the partnership between the keeper and the centre halves. Well, it's the same between the centre halves and the defensive mids, isn't it?
Aye.
There's something not working.
There needs to be an understanding
in that area of the park.
Absolutely.
From, say, the halfway line back, right back to our goal, that area they're responsible for us not working well. Whether it's coming early to clear balls that are pumped in, whether it's just closing down the opposition, there's something that's not performing as we would expect.
Now, Ken Walsh, who is a regular contributor to the broadcast, welcome back to the show, Ken. I hope everything's well over in Ireland. And he's saying that Ayr have 3 games. We can only pray that this gives Duffy some confidence for going forward. We're going to need so no point throwing on scrap. No point thrown in the scrap pile yet. I think this is an excellent point. So you look at the international breaks, sometimes you think, can't be doing with that, let's get back to the Celtic games. You start worrying about injuries and illness, Lawrence, under the circumstances. But we could benefit on 2 fronts here. And I'm hoping that we do. You could benefit on a Griffiths front, going to Scotland and maybe playing a part in 3 games and getting more fitness, more match fitness, coming back where he can play more of a part. Because obviously there's been some games where he's been left on the bench entirely recently. Yeah. But similarly with Duffy, 3 decent performances for Duffy. I mean, imagine him playing against England and scoring a winning goal and having a cracking leading captain's performance, and he starts getting that confidence back in familiar surroundings within the international team where he's the captain, he's a leader, and he's not getting the flack that he's getting at Celtic Park at the moment. That could be brilliant for Shane Duffy. This international break, I think, is actually pivotal. It could be pivotal for players like Duffy and Griffiths. So, although you're not a massive fan of international football, Lawrence, I think there are some benefits we could really extract from this break.
No, definitely. I mean, as long as we stay away from PlayStations and injuries, if players are getting minutes and building confidence and building fitness, hopefully, Shane and Lee Griffiths are both likely to weigh in with goals, aren't they? When Shane started, was it 2 goals in his first 2 games? If he comes back full of confidence and is bringing that back into the team, you've touched on Griff. If he's great at set pieces, if he's back in the team putting the corners in, yeah, it could be good for us. We just need to avoid injury. We need to avoid any COVID related stuff. If players come back fitter and more confident, it can only be good.
Oh, absolutely. Now, Patrick Murphy is commenting on YouTube. Nothing like working from home. The baby son down for his nap and Axom on YouTube. Hail, hail, lads. Great to see. Brilliant to see. And we're delighted that the figures are going up, Lawrence. And I think a key part of that, obviously, is the fact that we are broadcasting on a daily basis. So get yourself subscribing on YouTube if you haven't done so already. Now, El Yunusi, he was condemned by Chris Sutton, Paul Lambert and Chris Boyd, who obviously just dived in there as well, for using his phone. This was after a fantastic performance against a Lille side, and I keep saying this as well, that performance and that result against Lille will improve with age, because I think Lille's going to go into a really successful season, and probably will progress in the Europa League. And then a hat-trick against Motherwell. So was it all a bit over the top, the criticism of Mo El Yunusi?
Yeah, I said at the weekend, I don't know what he was checking on his phone to have an issue with it. No, it's the guy's not performing the park. I've got more of an issue with it. No, you touched on, it could be, it's breaking a club rule, it's undermining the manager a bit. I think it's blown out of proportion. I'm just like, you know what? I think Lenny was set up a bit by getting the question. He obviously didn't know, no one had informed him. What was Lenny's answer going to be to that question? Yeah, I'm cool with it. He's not going to say that because it's breaking a club rule, so he's got to come out and say something along the lines of what he did. And I think it's just giving the press another story to beat Celtic with, isn't it? Let's get another negative story out about Celtic and beat them with. They had a player on the phone on the bench.
There's worse places to check your phone.
Yeah.
There are. Behind the wheel.
Yeah, definitely.
In the shower.
We'll be doing that, yeah.
Tam Mannion on Facebook, welcome back to the show, Tam. Great to hear from you. The last international break, that's a good point. The last international break was catastrophic for us. The timing of this one, I think, could be beneficial. A wee break and hopefully break the momentum of the team playing out at Ibrox. It's actually a good point. There's no doubt there is a real belief and momentum coming out of Ibrox. Absolutely no point in denying that. That's the way it is. We're up against a serious challenge. We need to get our act together. But, one thing that hasn't happened is they've not had any real adversity this season. And you would expect over the period of a season that probably will rear its head. And you'll wonder how that could be managed with a squad that's not as deep as Celtic's squad. Yeah, touching that, they've not had their injuries. They've not had any COVID punishments or penalties that perhaps other clubs have suffered, like ourselves in Aberdeen. So why they had no penalty from the Scottish Football Joint Response Group, who knows? You've touched on the squad's not as deep. It does look like they'll progress from the Europa League group, which is going to give them more games to play. More congested. Just now it doesn't look like we're going to progress. Could that be a benefit to us over our already congested season? We already had 2 extra games, which, from last season's Scottish Cup. So would we benefit being out of Europe after Christmas and then being in it? Being stretched, hopefully, we'll take any kind of benefit we'll get. So they're going to, at some point, come up against injuries. We've lost James Forrest, huge loss to us, huge loss on the right-hand side. We're missing him cutting in, we're missing his goals, we're missing his assists, or just the pace that he can break up the park with, that he can take the ball, take the pressure off. At some point, they'll have their troubles, and hopefully, Lenny's got his positioned to take advantage of it. A few weeks ago we were talking about it. It says it's not
although the team wasn't performing great and we're not, it's really about how you perform in the running from January to when the trophies are handed out, isn't it? January to May. That's what's going to make you champion or not, isn't it?
Well, that all depends. It all depends. I mean, the issue that I would have with that, because normally, yeah, I remember Ronnie Dyler losing a game against Inverness Cali. He rested a few players. We went up there, we lost 1-0. He was resting the players for the European qualifiers, such as the way with Celtic. And you weren't that concerned because you knew that at some point during the season you're going to pull that back. I think that's all right if you don't have the serious challenger breathing down your neck. And I've said before, Lawrence, I actually think that we're going to be at a stage at the end of this season where the league's going to be won by a point. It's going to be won by a goal. It's going to be very, very tight. And the one thing I would say is whatever has been lost so far, so you're looking at the Kilmarnock draw, you're looking at the defeat against Rangers, whatever's been lost, we can't afford any more slip-ups.
I think this last season and the season before were told away the serious challenger. They look to be in better form than they were those seasons, but they went into the winter break last season having won the league, didn't they? That was the chart that Celtic were finished. We ended up winning the league, putting a run together. They fell apart for whatever reasons. It may happen again. Get the guys right. They've not had their injuries. They've not had their corona challenges to face or corona penalties to face. It will come at some point in the season. How they're going to handle it? Will they revert to type that they've done over the past few seasons, or will they rise to the challenge? We don't know. From January onwards, we've got 3 Old Firm games. So it'll be January, March, and April probably. Or is it December we play them? I can't remember. But you've got 3 kind of in the back half of the season, so to speak. If we win those 3 Old Firm games, big bearing where the league's going to go, isn't it?
It certainly will have a big bearing on where the main trophy goes, without a doubt, Lawrence. I'm still bemused as to the reasons behind Rangers fans coming on this broadcast, but I have been alerted to yet another abusive one, and they have now been blocked. Final point of the day is coming from Kevin Graham. Kevin joined us yesterday. Did we try and change too much too soon, and we have ended up in a period of transition instead of solid bets? Well, if we did, what you would hope for, Kevin, is that the changes will bed in, and hopefully they can in the second part of the season. Thanks everybody for getting involved on Axon Bulletin today. Your comments on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter have been much appreciated, but all that's left for me to say is thanks again, Lawrence Connolly, for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Thanks. Keep the faith.